Am I in it? Okay. The microphone I used to have disappeared, unfortunately. And I was listening to the recording of the recent one because I wanted to hear if I could tell a difference. So I need to get a new mic. But the one I used to have, they don't make it anymore. So anyway, that being said, we have a halacha Torah. I know last week we did Hilchos Pesach. Don't freak out. It was Hilchos Pesach, but we connected it to Hanukkah, the shaila of the famous idea that 30 days before a holiday, you're supposed to prepare by learning the halachas of the holiday 30 days before. And we spoke about, does that apply to Hanukkah? So that was found in Hilchos Pesach, and we connected it to Hanukkah. So we're not going to do Hanukkah today, but we're going to learn Hilchos Pesach again. And we're going to connect it to Tevilas Keilim. Can a child do Tevilas Keilim? Can you give your kid a new frying pan or whatever and say, hey, go take this to the mikveh and tevel this and then bring it back? If you do that, can you rely on his Tevilas Keilim? And it's going to connect the reason why it's in Hilchos Pesach. We're going to start off in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. We're kind of going to work backwards a little bit. The reason it's in Hilchos Pesach is because the same question applies. Can child do bedikas chametz? If you tell your kid, listen, I got to go to work tonight, the night of Orlar Basar, and I'm busy. I don't have time to do chametz. So if you don't mind, do me a favor, just go check the house for chametz and let me know what you find. If you do that, does that work for bedikas chametz? So we're going to talk about this. And again, this is going to touch on numerous sugyas in your daya, and I hope we'll at least have somewhat of a treatment for it. Usually we start with like a Gemara or like an earlier source typically and kind of work our way down. Today we're actually going to start a little bit in the reverse order. We're not going to have any Gemaras today, although obviously there are Gemaras all about Bedikas Chametz, and we're going to have the Aruch HaShulchan source too, kind of recaps some of our ideas here. In any event, let's start with the Shulchan Aruch Harav. This is the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe, yes, the very same Alter Rebbe that hopefully we're going to get to learn his Torah today also. We learned last week on Maimer Torah, or the same author of the Tanya, and he writes in Hilchos Pesach Siman Tov Lamed Beis, writes the following: Alter Rebbe was born in Lyozna, in Lithuania, which is present-day Belarus, and he was born in 1745. He passed away 1812. I think I've seen alternate dates that maybe he passed away 1813. I don't know. Not a historian. In any event, he's discussing the laws of Bedikas Chametz, and he writes as follows. Because he writes a law says Shliach LeBedikas Chametz, which really is not the topic we're going to talk about tonight. That's a whole other topic. Making a Shliach to do Bedikas Chametz, someone to do it on your behalf, which gets into the issue is the mitzvah shebegufa, like tefillin. Like you can't make a Shliach to put on tefillin for you. You can't say, hey, listen, I appoint you officially as my Shliach. Tomorrow I'm going to put on tefillin for me. That's a nice thing, but it doesn't work, right? Because mitzvah shebegufa, mitzvah that I have to do. You can't do. So they're going to have similar question with Bedikas Chametz. In any event, it's not going to be our topic for today. You want to make a shliach Bedikas Chametz. Who can you appoint? Yochel lasis afilu eved, even a slave, or isha, even a woman, or katan, or even a child. Sheyesh boy das, provided the child has das. It can't be a 2-year-old. It has to be a kid that's old enough to have some type of understanding of what he's doing. The Tevilas livdik. And he has to have the ability to fulfill what it actually says over there in Siman Tov Lamed Gimel about how to do the actual bedika, b'chaydos of zdakin, to go into all the crevices and the cracks, if use a feather, right, to get into the cracks. You have, as many homes in Queens have, if they haven't been renovated, maybe even if they have, wood flooring, cracks in the wood floors, you really have to check. You have to scrape it out with a feather, etc. So you could have an eved, an isha, a cotton could all do bedikas chametz. Sha'koil kisheim lebedikas chametz. Everyone is kosher to do bedikas chametz. Furthermore, v'hakoil na'amonim ala bedika. Everyone's believed. If someone says, "Hey, I did bedikas chametz," you believe him. Why would you not believe him? You believe him, right? Which is related to the concept of eid echad ne'eman b'isurin. One witness is believed. Normally, we require 2 witnesses in Yiddishkeit to believe anything, right? By chasana, you need 2 witnesses. If you have only 1, it's not a kosher chuppah. But by isurin, by things that are forbidden, like you walk into anybody's house, I don't know the food is kosher. Eid echad ne'eman b'isurin. The woman, or not to be chauvinist, whoever cooked the food, They're the one aid that's believed that the food is kosher. So too by chametz. Chametz is also by Pesach. So we say that we don't worry. Hakol nemanim abadik. Everyone's believed. Ve'ein choshishin shema yisatz livik yafe. We're not worried. I think I'm be lazy. It's a hard work. I think it's hard work. I'm tired. It's already been cooking for Pesach. It's tired. I'm lazy. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do a very quick shvach job. We don't worry about that since the Alter Rebbe. The Yishakru, and they're going to maybe lie, blame or yofa, but yeah, I did a very, very good. Don't worry, top to bottom, you name it. I checked every little crack in the whole house. Maybe they're lying. No, we're not worried about that. Why not? Now here's the kicker. This is the point we're going to try to dig into a little bit today. The key, since bedikas chametz is a mitzvah d'oraisa or mitzvah d'rabbanan, it's a mitzvah d'rabbanan. Why is it a mitzvah d'rabbanan? Continues the Alter Rebbe. Shamin ha-Torah dai bebitul bilvad k'voishin is barbazim dav lamed aleph. Because min ha-Torah, if you just do bittul, you make this inner proclamation that all the chametz I have is nothing, right? It's totally believed. It's contingent on your own willingness to be mevatel, to make it hefker. It's nothing. It's not mine. I don't care about it. So min ha-Torah, if you do bittul, and there's chametz in your house, it's okay. Doesn't matter. Mina Torah. Therefore, since the whole concept of bedikas chametz is not a mitzvah from the Torah, rather it's a mitzvah d'rabbanan. Lefichach haminu chacham. So chametz say no problem. Mitzvah d'rabbanan, we believe you. You're an isha, you're an eved, you're a katan. I don't care. We're not worried about it. Mitzvah d'rabbanan. V'heim amru livdek. They, the rabbanan, said check. And the very same rabbis who said to do bedikas chametz in the first place also said that if a child does it, you believe him. It's like many halachas, right? It's in many areas this apply. You have a law that a din d'rabbanan, and the very same rebbeim that said that such and such a halacha applies also said when it applies and when it does not apply. So too, the same rabbis who said to check for chametz, which the Torah doesn't say to do, those same rabbis said, and you can believe anybody. Anybody could do it. It's not hard. Here enters your day. Is there another chair? Someone grab another chair from the even though if you learned your day, if you learn the laws of kashrus, you know the chol heichadis chazik isur d'rabbanan. That if you have ischazik isur d'rabbanan, when there's a chazaka that there is an isur d'rabbanan, when you have a presumption, you believe that there is an isur d'rabbanan. In such a case, eina katan neman leimer takanti o isur. We don't believe a child to say he fixed it, he took care of it. As it says in Yeridei Simon Kuf Chav Zayin, which doesn't exist in the Alter Rebbe, even though he references it. It doesn't exist because there was a fire in Lubavitch, and part of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Nebuch, was lost. So we don't have this simon. We're going to look in the Yosef Karo there. I'm not going to look in the so-called regular Shulchan Aruch. We're going to look there. And so too, go with his flow of thought, right? That if you have a chazaka, a presumption that there's an Isur d'Rabbanan, we don't believe a katan to do it. The hochanamin here too in the case of chametz is chazik isura. There's a chazaka of an isur. What's the chazaka? That all year long I was eating chametz in the house. Is chazik isura shabayis mole chametz chol hashana. My house is full of cookies and crackers the whole year long. You want to believe a child now? It doesn't work that way. Afilu hachi, nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, but this case is different. Why? The katan is believed to say, I got rid of the chametz. Even though there's a chazaka that there was chametz beforehand. And even though the general rules, we don't believe a katan if there's a chazaka that there's an isser there. But, hoyil v'hoya b'yodoi levaer. More keywords. He could do it. Literally, he has within his hands to get rid of the chametz. And this is not rocket science. Just go clean the house, get rid of the chametz. How complicated is this? He's able to do it, which implies, by the way, similar to what we mentioned before, he has to be a bardas already. He has to be of a certain age that he's actually able to understand what he's supposed to do and how to actually do it. Tell your 2-year-old, clean the house for chametz. Good luck. They're bringing more chametz in. But at a certain age, they're going to be able to do it. Therefore, we believe the katan. Anything that's within the ability of the child to do, think about Tevilas Keilim for a minute. Can he dunk it in the water? Dunk it in a mikveh? Why not? Okay, think about it. Anything that is in his capacity to do, he's believed to say he did it. Commotion is bar, but as it says in Yerideh Sim Kuf Chav Zayin, which doesn't exist in the Alter Rebbe, burned in a fire, and as it also says in Sim Kuf Chav in Yerideh, which also doesn't exist in the Alter Rebbe. We're going to see the big Shulchan Aruch. Yeah.
When you table a keilah, do you need to have kavanah?
That's a good question. That that's a good question. The Magen Avram talks about it. Is it Magen or? No, it's the Taz. The Taz talks about it. Maybe we'll get to it. It's a good question.
No.
It relates to Nida. Does a woman who's Nida, does she need Kavana when she goes to mikvah? Do you need to have Kavana when you dunk a pot in the mikvah? Similar question, sort of. Maybe the Taz talks about it. Maybe we'll get to that. Let's skip the rest of the Alter Rebbe for now. So
what I was trying to get to, if you need kavanah, when a child, you said you could give it to a child. Is a child bardas to have kavanah?
So it has to be a bardas. That's for sure. If we're going to allow a child to do it, he for sure has to be a bardas. That's for sure. Whatever age that is exactly. Okay. The Aruch HaShulchan here is just explaining why you need what's bedika. What do you bedika for? It says Chacham mitzrichu shnei advarim. Chacham is the beginning of Masechet Pesachim. It required 2 things. You need bedika v'bittul. You need to do bedika, you need to check for chametz, and you also need to do bittul. What do you need to do both for? Just do one and Shalom Al Yisrael and relax a bit before Pesach. What do you need to do both? The Chachamim said, even though Minat Torah, it's enough to do bittul. However, they didn't want to rely just on bittul. Why not? It's dependent on your das, on your thoughts. Do you really want to be mafkir? Do your bottle of scotch that you've been saving, you really want to be mafkir that? And we don't know exactly, you can't exactly tell how do you give someone guidance. This is how to be willing to give up your bottle of scotch. Everybody's different. You like the scotch more than I like the. I don't know. How are you going to be mavatal it? So maybe people can be makel, going to be lenient. And you're not going to really fully relinquish your juicy bottle of scotch. Therefore, the Chachamim said, they say you got to check for chametz as well.
Isn't there Al Yira by Matzah?
Right.
Issue also?
But bittul min atayra, bittul is enough for that.
Okay.
It's not mine anymore. I was mafkir. The problem is the Chachamim said, were you really mafkir? Really? Even the scotch, the really good bottle, even now you were mafkir? Also do bedika. What does bedika help? That way, if you find that bottle of scotch, if you find a really nice chocolate chip cookie right in the middle of Pesach, you don't eat it. Because it's not there. You can't eat it if it's not there. So they said, do bedika, get it out of the house, just as a precaution, lest you find that cookie. Goes well with scotch, maybe. And eat it. During Pesach, so they say you have to do bedika too. That's the Gemara, the beginning of the Mishnah Pesachim, or lar basar b'knes chametz kolomer shaloi lismach ala bittul. Bittul alone is not enough. Then why not just do bedika? And then if you don't have chametz, you can't eat it either. And if you don't own it, you're not over bal your bali matzah. So just do bedika. Forget about bittul. No. They said no bittul too. Why? You're going to find chametz. Okay, so you need both. Anyway, that's just a brief background why you need both. But the nakuta, the main point I wanted to convey is that bedikas chametz is a din d'rabbanan.
Don't we learn somewhere that what the rabbis say is we should do needs to be heated in the same way?
Sure.
That you listen to a dioresen?
Yeah, for sure.
So then,
in fact, it says, forget, the Gemara says, right. It's actually more stringent.
Right. No. So if that's the case, it seems from what we just read that it's almost like devaluing that because it's just the batik is just the dirabanan. then you can have the katan do it.
Well,
If it was the Doraisa, you couldn't, but in theory, the Durabon should be viewed in the same way.
right. So that's, I think, what he meant, what the Alter Rebbe meant in the second little paragraph over there. It's just two paragraphs because it was on a different page in Eitzar HaChachma. That's when I copied it. The second paragraph, the second line, V'heim amru livdok, v'heim amru shahalal ne'amonam lo b'dika. It's the same people who said to do it, said how to do it. They set the guidelines of what B'dikas Chametz requires or what it does not require. Okay, let's go straight to the Shulchan Aruch now. Siman Kuf Chaf. Siman Kuf Chaf, you have it over there? Texture Keilim. The laws of Kashan can sin Yerodea. And the last siman on the page over here, siman Yudalad. You see that? The Yudalad? Very straightforward halacha here, right? Says the Mechaber, Ein my meaning katan al Tevilas Keilim. We do not believe a child, we don't trust him, we don't believe him to do Tevilas Keilim. Why not? Look in the Taz on the right. See the Taz? The Turei Zov. The Taz was David Halevi Segal. He was born in 1586. He died in 1667, Poland. He was the son-in-law of the Bach, the Bais Chodesh, Rabbi Yosef Sirkis, who was the commentator. If you open the Torah, there's the Bach, there's the Beis Yosef and the Bach on the page around the Torah. The Bach was his father-in-law, and he sued him. He took him to a din Torah. The Taz took his shver to a din Torah. Whole mice about this. Okay. Anyway, for another time, the Taz says as follows. See on the fourth line, huh?
Yeah, the big machlokes besides besides the.
He wasn't afraid to argue with the shver. Okay, on the third line of the Taz, at the end there's a little tezayin. This is going. See the tezayin back in the Shulchan Aruch where the Yudalit is the tezayin there, which is ein maminim. That's going this tezayin. So Taz says ein maminim katan v'chulu. Why not? Lefi. Here's the key word. Tevilas Keilim doiraisa. Not all Rishonim actually agree that it's the right. In fact, the Rambam in Chosmai Chavos Asuros actually seems to say it's the Rabbon, if I understand. But we paskin here. You have the Taz saying, and the Mechaber's paskin in this way, that the reason why a katan is not believed to do Tevilas Keilim is because Tevilas Keilim is a din d'oraisa. Which parsha? Matos, no? With Midyan, the clay Midyan. Okay, in any event. V'im says that we might as well see the rest of the Taz, right? V'im tavlu lifnei gadol, if he toveled it and an adult was supervising. So the Truma Shadeshin writes that filu the svirle nida shedevel siricha kavana. Here's your question. You asked that you need kavana. That even according to the svara that says that a woman who's a nida, when she goes to mikvah, that she needs to have kavana, that she's toveling l'shem tara, which is not necessarily how we probably okay.
You could say if you need kavana when you make a bracha on anything.
Okay, maybe. So even according to the svar that says that neither should develop tzricha kavana mikol mokum, nevertheless, on here by Tevilas Keilim, which means if you need kavana, you have to be an adult. By Tevilas Keilim mikol mokum kan efshar legodol she'olamid zeh she'chavan latar. No, so the adult can teach him how to do it. Teach him what it means to have kavana to immerse it in the mikveh. Number one. Number two, v'oid the betfilo zu she'enim tumos latara. Man lemel on the boy kavana. Who says you need kavana b'chlal? By Tevilas Keilim. Who says you need kavana? Says the Taz. Adkan, according to Trumas Hadeshin. I'm the late cause of Kan Ramah shetorach shalom dinu agadol. From the fact that the Ramah, which we didn't read, see the Ramah says Hagah back in the middle of the Yudalit. Hagah avol im tovlu lifnei gadol heavy tvila. The Ramah just says pashut. If an adult is supervising and the child immerses that item in the mikvah, it's good. Heavy Tevila. So says the Taz, back into the Taz, who made the loy cause of Kan Ramah shetorach shalom dinu agadol. The Ramah, who knew the Trumas Hadeshin we just quoted, doesn't write that you have to teach him how to have kavanah, that you have to explain what it means, why you're immersing it, and what's going to happen after you immerse it. He just says, as long as the adult is supervising it, means, and that he knows to fully immerse it properly, take his hand off, whatever it may be. But kavanah no mention in the Ramah. So says the Taz, I infer from this Ramah, who doesn't say that the adult has to teach him the kavana. He holds like the last tirutz in the Chumas Adeshin. The kan loy ben kavana klal. You don't need kavana at all by Tevilas Keilim. So he learns, the Taz learns from the Ramah that Tevilas Keilim does not require kavana. Fine. Let's look at another Ramah. This is a Ramah. The Ramah was 1530.
So we're in the supervisions because it's a deraisa to make sure he's doing it right.
Yeah, exactly. It's a din deraisa. Exactly. Now the Ramah in number 4. See, we have the Ramah again. This is also in Yeridea, a few simonim later. So in Kuf Chav Zayin, we went from Kuf Chav to Kuf Chav Zayin. I didn't copy the whole shtickle over here because there's too much of it on the page. The Ramah was born 1530 and died 1572. And so the Taz, we just quoted, is just born 14 years after. The Ramah was in Poland. So the Ramah says as follows. If the cotton is chorif, sharp, he's a sharp kid, and he's baki, he knows how to do things. And there's people would know if he's lying. There's ways to verify things. Then if he testifies, a child, that such and such an item of food is forbidden, or that such and such a thing was not toifet, or that such and such a thing is also for whatever reason, we believe him. We believe him that it's also. However, if when it comes to an Isser D'Rabbanan, and he says, no, it's okay. And he said, the Rabbanan such as Bedikas Chametz. No, I checked the Chametz. Yeah. That's made al Isser D'Rabbanan, which is the Bedikas Chametz. Lo Hakel. V'lo is Chazik Yisura. And there's no chazaka of a pre-existing Isser. Get ready for this. Are you ready? Kegoin Bedikas Chametz. Nema, he's believed.
So according to what he's just saying, Cotton testify that I saw this person dead, so a woman shouldn't could remarry.
I don't know.
Not
V'lo is chazik yisur. Kegon b'digas chametz neman. Why? Tehemnu rabbanon b'dirabbanon. They believed him by the rabbanon. The chachamim who made the din rabbanon believe him by the rabbanon. Aval im is chazik yisura. It's getting more complicated. But if there is a chazaka of a pre-existing isur status, einoi neman klal.
So that goes against Alter Rebbe?
Right. Exactly. So I read this Ramah. I'm like, what?
I was Alter Rebbe going against.
What? If there's a pre-existing isur, yeah, like the chametz that you had in your house all year long, that's called ischazik isura, a zikr. There's no question about that. So the Alter Rebbe said clearly, sure he's believed because b'dikas chametz is only the rabbanon. When it comes to rabbanon and he's able to do it, v'haya b'yodei lasis, the Alter Rebbe said, which b'dikas chametz, just go check. It's not that hard. We do believe him. There are muscles we don't. Take a look in the Shach. Shach is on the same side. Shach is right there on the side of the page with the Taz, the other side. Shach was 1621 to 1662, Lithuania, and then ended up in the Czech Republic, or maybe it was called Czechoslovakia then. So, almost 1621 to 1662. So he was younger than the Taz, but was not shy to argue with the Taz. And in fact, the general klal of psak, because we pass on like the Shach, not the Taz, in general. So the Shach writes as follows over here. Miu. However, even though the Ramah wrote that when there's a chazaka of a pre-existing isser such as chametz, we don't believe the child. Says the Shach, Miu, however, hey chaduhu biyodoi, If it's within his hands, meaning he's able to fulfill it, then a katan neman. Then he's believed that then he's believed. So he's amending seemingly the Ramah. You could be believed for chametz.
Doesn't the Rama say below Saki Surah can go with the stomach?
Yeah.
So he's saying
Right, he's saying that it's not a Chassidus.
Right. So what's the Ramah saying?
He's saying that therefore the kid should be believed.
Right, but then he says, "Aval im is chazik yisura." If there is a chazak yisura, which is b'dikas chametz, there's chametz the whole year long.
But he said in the line before, below Esek Isura can go with the stomach.
I know he said that. Do you know what it means?
Yeah, he's given an example of a non-ches consistent.
How is there no chazaka of chametz in your house from the whole year long? I mean, maybe your house is different than my house. What?
It's not us until Pesach.
Okay, interesting. Taka. So there's actually a nafka. What if it's after the Shal Shishis on Erev Pesach? Then could you have a cut and do it? Because then it's a din d'oraisa. It's no longer the Rabban. Okay, that could be a nafka. Okay, let's take a look in the Dogam Revava, who's on the page of the Shulchan Aruch. Sometimes he was born 1713, died 1793. Dogam Revava, better known as the Noide B'Yehuda. Noide B'Yehuda was Yechezkel Lando. He was in Prague. He was born in Poland, but then was the famous Rav in Prague. Most well known for Shailas and Shuvas. That the Shailas and Shuvas Noide B'Yehuda, called Noide B'Yehuda because his father's name was Yehuda. He was Yechezkel. So he writes as follows: Kedem B'dikas Chametz, Ayin B'Magin Avram, Seif Siman Tov Lamed Zayin. Ooh, the plot thickens. Go look up the Magen Avram. Ooh, that's what he says. Go look up the Magen Avram. Okay, let's look up the Magen Avram. Oh, wait, before we look up the Magen Avram, look at the next source, the Pischei Tshuva, also on the page of the Shulchan Aruch. Pischei Tshuva is Avram Tzvi Hersh Eisenstadt, or Eisenstadt, whatever you pronounce the name. Lithuania, Russia, 1812 to 1868. He says, "Kegoin b'dikas chametz." This is both right. The Dogam Revava that we just saw, again, Dogam Revava, aka Noide B'Yehuda, and the Pischei Tshuva are both referring to the same words in the Ramah, which we are discussing right now. A little bit troubling. Kegoin b'dikas chametz, and the Ramah said b'dikas chametz is a situation where there's no pre-existing chazaka of chametz. So Dogam Revava mysteriously says, "Go look up the Magen Avram over there." Comes the Pischei Tshuva, Ayin b'Magen Avram. Yeah. Go look in the Magen Avram, Simon Tov Lamed Zayin. Yeah, go look over there. Sif Katan Ches, he even tells you which sif to look in. Shehiniach divrei Ramah elu b'tzarchim. Ayin Sham. That he leaves the words of the Ramah with a tzarchim. Which means basically, shrug, I don't know. Ayin Sham, go look over there. So you know what we should do? We should go look over there. Let's take a look. So now you have the Shulchan Aruch, Hilchos Pesach, Tov Lamed Zayin. Look in the middle, Sif Dalet, that's the Machaber. Bayis Shahuchzot Shaloi Bodku Hamaskir, a house that is being rented out by someone, and there's a chazaka that the owner of the home didn't check it. But the Omer Ishay Eved Katan, a woman or a slave or a child said, "Onu Badaknuhu, we did it." Do you believe him? Well, we learned before, right? Sure. Why not? We believe him. V'hu, provided that can't be a 2-year-old. So do we believe a katan did the b'dikas chametz? Yes, absolutely. Clear halacha Shulchan Aruch. Absolutely. Here comes,
So in Eved, you could.
Yeah, if you have a slave, you can do it.
Because
So-
he has that, because he has das or he has monis.
Because he has das, and also based on the shach that we had earlier, because v'hoya b'yodei lasos. He can do it. It's not rocket science. We're just saying, go find chametz, go find pretzels. That's all we're doing. Okay, cracks, crevices, fine. Take a candle, take a feather. So here on the page with the tiles on the left, we have the tiles before 1586 to 1667, and the Magen Avram Gobiner, 1635 to 1682. Also younger than the Taz, also argued with the Taz also. And also the Klal Psak in general, we also follow the Magen Avram over the Taz. So follow the Magen Avram, generally. Okay, let's take a look in the Magen Avram here. See the Ches, the second wide line in the middle, Ne'amanim. That's if the house is a chazaka, it had not been checked, which means in plain English that we assume there's chametz there. Why did we assume there's chametz there? Because there was chametz there yesterday, and the day before, and the day before. There's chametz all year. So we assume, so the house has chazak of chametz. Chametz is in the rice, obviously. If it's actual chametz, that is. But a child says, I did it. Don't worry, I took care of it, I checked it. Do we believe the child? Paskins the machaber? Yes. Comes the Magen Avram, Ne'amanim, Kivan. Why do we believe him? Kivan the Bedikas Chametz v'derabbanan. Because Bedikas Chametz is a din derabbanan, like we saw. It's not a deraisa. Deraisa, all you need is bit. Va'ayin ma shekasavti siman tavlam vav. Go over there. The ein lismich lechatchil on nashim. You shouldn't really rely on women. He says it's not politically correct, but okay, whatever.
So
It's being recorded as live stream that I just say can't trust. We're going to get to why. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Can't trust women for this. Yeah.
So according to what just says, you can't trust a woman. Could you trust an abbot?
Yes. So, oh, you mean a difference between women? Yeah. There's a difference. He's machalik. He makes differentiate between women and abbot. Yes.
Because an abbot is it's like an isha.
In many cases, but here it mentions only women.
Okay, I'm not.
You're not worried about political correctness, right?
No, I'm
Me
not.
neither.
You got the
You had a
wrong
comment on
guy.
the question? No. Okay. Let's see what it is. Let's go through. Let's read this in the Magen Avram today. Huh? What do you want? It was said already.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see the Magen Avram here. It's a Gishmak in Magen Avram. The Eilis Mochlachatchila Nosh. Even though a woman is believed, Lechatchila don't rely on it. Bechin Mashbet B'Maril, find Maril also. The Taisus Be'ervin Kosful. The Taisus writes as follows: the B'Bai Shalahem Nemanim, their house they're believed. If you send them to do it, we don't believe in even the Rabbanim. We're going to go through this quickly. I'm trying to get to the point. Okay, Kosful. Demasha beyodim the money. Elakim the bedikas chametz to Torah God is the point. Elakim the bedikas chametz to Torah God. Bedikas chametz is a big job, as everybody's ever done it knows that it's a big job. Then ilu haya deraisa loya yuneman. If it was a din deraisa, we would not believe them, because it's a very big job to do. For ayin b'yeda deyasim and kufchaf. Interesting. Look in yeda deyasim and kufchaf, which we saw before, where the Shulchan Aruch paskins clearly that a child is not believed to do Tevilas Keilim. So instead of the Magen Avram, go look over there, should possibly in Tevilas Keilim to call an Ein Neman. Why not? The Taz said, because Tevilas Keilim is Daraisa. Oh, here comes the pièce de résistance, as they say.
So, then with the rice a cut does not believe.
Correct.
Okay.
V'tzarich iyun al Ramah, the bomb question: what's going on with the Ramah? Shekosav b'Yeridei Sim Kuf Chol Zayin, that he writes in Yeridei the simon that we saw in source 4. He writes the Chametz lois chazik isura. He writes that by Chametz there's no chazak of an isur, and therefore lefichach ne'emanim. What do you mean? Chametz is chazik isura. What are you talking about? Yes, of course there's a chazak of isur chametz all year long. It says over there in the Rivash. Rather, as the Shach points out over there, the reason why they're believed is because it's biyodam to do it. They're able to do it. And it's a din d'Rabbanan. So, again, even though there's a chazaka that there's chametz there, which normally a cotton cannot remove that chazaka, however, since it's a din d'Rabbanan, and they're capable of doing it, therefore they're believed.
Even though it's a tircha.
Correct.
The tircha does not trump the fact that they won't do it properly just because they physically are able to.
Correct, because it's a tircha, but maybe it's not such a big tircha.
The woman still can't be believed.
So actually, there's shittas like this. Some shittas say the women are not believed. Why? Because They're lazy. They don't want to do it. I'm sorry. And it's a big job. However, others say no, exactly the opposite. Because they're lazy, it's not pshat lazy. The pshat is that they are, what's the correct word? They are thorough. So if they're thorough, then of course they're believed to do bedigas chametz. Maybe it'll take them longer, but they'll do a very thorough job.
I was gonna say, because you trust them in the kitchen, they're doing everything, the kosher, it's not to clean the house, like, you trust them for everything else with the household, if you want to say.
Yeah.
And they probably know more, but to say, oh, you can't trust them.
Yeah, okay. So there's different approaches in this area. Okay. So go back to source number 1, at the last paragraph, source number 1 in the Alter Rebbe. However, not to rely on a child or a slave or a woman. Has to be free people, not a slave. That are bar mitzvah. Why? It's a big job, a big hassle. That's mitzvah min mufchar, he says. That's ideal. However, are they allowed to do it? Absolutely. 100%. So, to recap a little bit, there's halachas that are d'oraisa, there are halachas that are d'rabbanan. There's also a concept of ischazik isura. Do we know something was aser? For example, a woman who's nida, she's a chazaka of isur. Or a pot, a brand new cup or whatever you bought from the store, from Agenda. It's a chazaka, it needs to be toivel. It's a chazaka, it's an isur to use it. Food that, well, if it hasn't been taken meiser from it, in Eretz Yisrael. It's also those all have a chazaka of an isur. So Katan is not believed to say that he did those if those are isur d'rabbanan, if they're isur d'oraisa. However, if it's an isur d'rabbanan, those very same rabbis that said this is aser also said that a child is believed to do it, provided that it's something that's biyodei lasis, it's within his grasp to do. So the bottom line is, can a child do bedigas chametz? Answer is yes, because bedigas chametz is the din d'rabbanan. Alter Rebbe Paskin's mitzvah min mufchar not, but he could. Can a child do Tevilas Keilim? No. Why? Unless, says the Rama,
Someone's watching him.
Someone's watching him. Do you have to explain what he's doing? According to the Taz, no. Who says that you need kavanah for Tevilas Keilim?
So the same thing by myself. So the cotton take myself, even if
it depends if it's demai or if it's. I think it would depend if it's demai or if it's.
Even though
if
a brother was watching him, is that making any difference?
That should be okay, as far as I know. This you have to ask people that are the mitzvah tzliyas ba'aretz. American rabbis don't know these halachas, right?
I'm not questioning. I just
no, you couldn't question them. I'll tell you if I know, if I don't know. Okay, let's do the mimer. We have a few minutes. Let's take a mimer a little bit. The Alter Rebbe. Okay, I hope I didn't bite off more that I can chew for the halacha portion over here. But we did what we did. Okay, I need one copy, so I don't have enough copies for everybody. But now. Oh, I forgot to mention. Okay. I forgot to mention that tonight's Limud Torah was sponsored generously by Yaakov Akayin and his Rebbetzin Elisa Rosov, who sponsored Le'ilin Nishmas, your wife's grandmother, whose Yortzeit is tonight, which is the 15th of Mar Cheshvan. Yortzeit is tonight, and the name, oh my gosh, right now I'm blanking on the name. Rivka Bas Emmanuel. So the Nasham should have an aliyah, the schus of our attempting to work through a little bit of a sugya in Yeridea, a little bit of a sugya in Hilchos Pesach. And now, God willing, we're going to attempt to work through a very short mimer from the Alter Rebbe. It's on page Yud Gimel, Parshas Lech Lecha. It's a little bit of a sister mimer from the mimer we did last week, which was on page Yud Beis, Anochi Nogei Loch. But now we're going to do this very uncharacteristically short mimer for Torah Or. The Maimorim in Torah Or are typically much longer, but it's on page Yud Gimel. in the left column. It's called Yud Gimel Amud Beis. If you ever see a reference to Torah, there's Yud Gimel Amud Beis, Gimel Dalet and Hey. This is Aleph, Beis, Gimel and Dalet. I said Hey, there's no Hey. Gimel and Dalet. That's how it works, the pagination. Anyway, Sarai Ishtecha Lo Tikra Shma Sarai. Sarai, your wife, and the end of this mimer, I'm just giving you a warning in advance. The end of the mimer might get a little bit hairy. So we'll do the best we can to work through it, and it's okay if it gets a little bit hairy? You don't even know what that means, right? You don't know what it means. Okay. So, but we'll do our best. Sometimes it's a clue, like the shorter something is, the more difficult it is, like a Tevilas, like the really short Tevilas, sometimes, I don't know what that means. The long ones, it tells you what it means, it explains it, but okay. Sarai, your wife, is no longer going to be called Sarai. We know the story, right? Kisara Shma. Her name's going to be Sarah. Fine. Now, the question is like this. Why does a person get a name change? What's the purpose of changing someone's name? Change the mazel. Yeah. Just the etzem of who they are. Let's think about some famous name changes just for a minute by way of trying to make it less hairy. Yeshua. Oh, what was his name before? Hoshea. What's the name changed to? Yeshua. Why? Oh, is the adds a yud. The yud and the hey is yud ke ka, God. Ka hoshiacha me'atzas meraglim. God should spare you, should save you from the bad counsel of meraglim. So his name change is not stam on board of it. His name is meant to be an aliyah. So he's gives him a boost. Change the mazel, the whatever it is exactly is happening, but it's meant to be a boost. You mentioned Yaakov. What's your name? Yaakov means heel. He came out last Nebuch. He's holding on to his brother's heel. I heard a word today that Esav is like related to the word asui, completed or made. How does the word go?
The Yaakov held on to the Yud.
That Yaakov is always judged by what he's doing. He's grabbing onto the heel, and Esav is judged by how he looks. What is that? By how he appears. I don't know. Okay, sorry. I tried to vote, it didn't work. So he gets an name change to Yisrael. Ekev means the heel. What's Yisrael? Sarisa imanoshim how does it go? Sarisa imalokim v'imanoshim v'atuchol. You wrestled, you battled whoever you battled, and you overcame them. There's an aliyah in his name. It ascends to a higher level. Yosef also is in some place, I think one place somewhere in Tanakh, called Yehoisef. Yehoisef gets an extra hey. Yosef already means to add. Yehoisef with the hey is like God will add. God will add and increase blessing for you and so forth. So Yosef's name change also is an aliyah. You also have in the Gemara in Soita says that Yehuda was originally called, also had a name change. And the Marsha, I think, says something that his name was originally Oide. Oide, I think. But it was changed to Yehuda. Also, he gets the Yud K, God's name. So name changes typically indicate an aliyah. That being said, Sarai changes to Sarah. So you go from a Yud to a Hey. So according to Kabbalah, the Yud is Chachma, the Hey is Bina. Chachma is the Reshis HaYishtalshlos. This is where the entire chain-like descent of the process of creation of the world, that's where it all begins. Everything begins with the Yud. Everything begins with Chachma. So to change to a Hey, which is Bina, is a Yerida. I think this is the question that's couched over here. So her name change seemingly is the opposite of what a name change is meant to be. Her name change is a Yerida. She goes from a Yud, which is the Nakuda, right? Any Sefer knows I'm not a Sefer. I've met some. A Yud is really the beginning of every other letter. If you don't have a Yud, you don't have any letters. Every letter, when you write it, essentially starts out as a Yud and then expands and takes shape into whatever other shape is going to take shape in. So the Yud is the foundation of all. It's where everything begins. It's the core of everything. It's the Nakuda from where everything else expands. So she goes from this all-inclusive point in the language of Kabbalah, Chochmah, and she descends, Nebuch, now she has a Hey, Nebuch. That's Bina, that's an expansion. That's an explosion, if you will. So that's a descent, Kabbalistically speaking. So why would you change her name to make it go lower?
Well, the hey was added.
Avram was also added.
We're gonna talk about that at the end. That's where it gets a little bit hairy. We're gonna talk about that at the end. Okay, let's try this. Why was her name changed? Simple. She said she'd have a baby. Say, Sarai will not have children. She is barren. She cannot have children. But Sarah will. So the whole reason for the name change is in order to enable her to have children, which is the whole purpose of marriage, is to have children. So she got married. She can't have children. Why can't she have children? Something to do with the Yud. The Yud doesn't let her have children. So I don't know what that means. The Yud doesn't let her have children. So change her name, swap out the Yud for a Hey. Now she can have kids. You hear what's happening? You hear what's developing it?
Yeah, but why not swap out the Reish from Sarai
Fine.
for another letter? Keep the Yud.
Fine. We're gonna see. We're gonna see why. Huh?
It's like Scrabble.
It's like Scrabble, right? We're gonna see why I have to change the Yud. So if the whole purpose of the name change is to have a child, then so you have to understand how the Yud is a higher level than a Hey. So to have children, you have a Yerida. Having children is an Aliyah. Having children is the greatest thing possible. The closest a person can come to emulating HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself is a woman having a child. There's nothing greater than that. Right? It's the Koich Ein Sof. When a man and woman are married, they have the Koich Ein Sof to replicate, to create a new life. I remember when my oldest son was born, I was in Keilim. I remember after he was born, and whatever it was the next day or whatever, whenever my wife went home from the hospital, I don't remember how long she was there, whatever it was, a day or two, they kick you out, usually pretty fast in the hospital. Took him home in the little car seat. We come into our apartment, we put him down on the floor, and we sit in a chair opposite each other, like looked at him on the floor and looked at each other, and we're like, what? Like he wasn't here a day ago. So there's a koich ein sof to mamish create a new life. So that's a Yerida. Sarah goes from a Yud to a Hey. That's a Yerida. How are you going to create a new life by going down? Ki a Yud Chochma and Hey is Bina. Bina is a lower level. So V'noi, that's no. I'm trying to move a little bit quickly so we can try to get through it. It's short, but it's a little bit complex. V'noi ki Ikar Elodom Chinas Chochma. Really, everything begins with Chochma. You cannot have Haylod, you cannot have birth, you cannot have the beginning of anything if you don't have Chochma first. What's Chochma? Because Chochma is nothingness. Chochma is an emptiness. Chochma is bittul. Chochma is a suspension of self. Chochma me'ayin, as the full part of Chochma me'ayin to nothing. Chochma is related to ayin, to nothingness. We're going to try to explain. Mashenkin bina. Bina is nikra yesh. Bina is, here I am. Bina is an I. Bina is the is. And if you're an is, then you can't reproduce. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Let's read a little bit further. So how is it the other way around? That in order for her to be able to birth, the Yud is taken away from her. I'm going to try to explain this if I can. The Yud is taken away from her. The Yud is Chochma. The Yud is the ability. The Yud is where everything begins. The nothingness is where everything begins. We all began out of Torah Vavoyu. What is the first pasuk in the Torah? Breishis bara elikim, not Yud Kei Vavke. We know that Yud Kei Vavke is the Shem Midas Harachim, the Midah of Chesed. But Shem Elokim is the Midah of Din and Gvura. So Breishis bara, who created? Elokim. The Tzimtzum, the contraction, the holding back, the Din, the judgment, the measurement, the severity, the Gvura. That's the beginning of creation. The beginning of anything new starts with Choch, starts with Yud, starts with a nothingness, or in the language of Kabbalah, he doesn't say it here, but Tzimtzum, a withdrawal, if you will. I'll try to explain. So how can it be that in order to give birth, Lukach Mita Keichayud, she's robbed of her ability to reproduce? That's the Yud, that's where all things begin from. I take a hay instead. How are you going to have a baby if you get a hay? Everything begins with nothing. Everything begins with this primordial nothingness. Well, what existed before we existed? Nothing. What was in the beginning? Tayu vavoyu, Bereshis bara Elokim. So you need to have Chochmah before anything happens. Everything begins with a retraction, with a zeroing in. I want to say mashal, I don't know if I should say quite yet, or let's go a little further, and I'll try to share mashal. Try to explain. Avram and Sarah kabbalistically refer to two different levels of chachma. They're actually both chachma. They're both on the same level. One's chachma ilah, higher chachma. One's chachma tata. Fine, but they're both chachma. So, in one way, Avram is chachma, and Sarah is chachma, or Avram and Sarai. Sheshayrish Avram v'vchinas chachma datzilus. Okay, he's in chachma. So this is the way it works spiritually, says the Alter Rebbe. In order for there to be something new, not just a manipulation of whatever happens to be around. In order to create a new being such that you take him home from the hospital, put him on the floor in the car seat and look at him and go, he wasn't here yesterday. In order to have that, you have to contract. There has to be a closing, a zeroing in. It's like, think about it like vision. How do you see something? The pupil. The pupil has to contract to limit how much light comes in order for you to be able to see. So the first step towards vision is tzimtzum, is closing the pupil to limit how much light gets in. That's the first step of everything. If the Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem, would just expand and flow without any limit to its infinity, what would happen? Nothing would be able to exist. Even if you had much ishtalshalus, or the chain like the center of the world, if it was just pure Ein Sof, nothing would exist. It would just go and go and go and go, not allowing room for anything else, not allowing room for anything new. But in order to have creation, you got to have a pupil that closes off that flow. Or it's like the same thing with a camera. You have to adjust the f-stop on the camera. Everything's automatic. But many of the people here maybe remember cameras. You have to actually adjust them. Adjust the f-stop to limit. The only way to get a picture on the film itself is by limiting how much light goes. If you just open up the shutter and leave it open for 5 seconds on the biggest f-stop, and all the light comes in, what happens to your film? It's ruined. There's no picture of anything. Too much light will overwhelm the world. So in order to not overwhelm, you need tzimtzum. That's the pupil dilates, or the opposite, but it's shrinking. Contracts. Or you shut down the f-stop a little bit more. To allow the light to come in, but to filter it. Or maybe not filter is the right word, but to measure it, to modulate it. However, Sarah, down here in this world, not in her spiritual source, is the opposite. Sarah, however, is the opposite. If she's only going to close down the pupil, if she's going to only contract the pupil to limit how much light comes in, that's the yud. The yud is like the tzimtzum, which is the starting point of everything, which is the necessity. But if you only have the tzimtzum, if you only close up the pupil, what's going to happen? You close it all the way. It's going to be pure darkness. You can't see anything. That's the flip side. So step one to creating a new reality, to creating a new being, is tzimtzum. Bereishis bar Elokim, limit the flow of light, which is what we said in last week's Maimer about Avram Avinu. That's why it's Anochi Mogen Loch. That's why that's the meaning of the bracha Mogen Avram, the shield of Abraham. Because Avram was a flow of chesed, unmitigated chesed to the world. So we said, if you have only a flow of chesed, you end up with Yishmael, and you Esav separate something else. You end up with Yishmael. You end up giving Lu Yishmael, Yichel Lefanecha, we read in last week's parasha. You end up giving even to Yishmael, knowing full well who he is, because hey, I like to do chesed. I'm giving chesed. So we need a Mogen Avram. We need to shield that. But Sarah is the opposite problem.
Sarah is like all shield. She's all yud, and the yud is tzimtzum. And if that is unchecked, if it's tzimtzum, it's the opposite of Avram. It's the other side of the coin. Then there'll be pure darkness. So he says, the main way to have a new metzias, a new reality, is by after the tzimtzum, now untzimtzumify it. Now let the floodgates open. Now open it up. Open up your eyes. Let the light into the camera. If you don't ever press the shutter release on the camera, it doesn't matter what your f-stop setting is. It doesn't matter what the shutter speed. It doesn't matter what kind of film you have. You have to push the button to open up and let the light in. That's sarah. That's the hay, is the expansiveness of that, to allow for the flow. Let's skip the parentheses because it's very hairy. And it's a parenthesis, so I can easily get away with skipping it, right? Okay. Okay, Umashni tells Avram, hey Avram, this that Avraham gets the hay, because Avram doesn't give birth either. Avram is not able to have a child either. He needs a hay. Avraham is chacham. He's the tzimtzum. He's the closing of the pupil. Like the pasuk says, that's the hay. You're going to have many children. You're going to have an expansiveness. People that were made. So Avram and Sarah in the spiritual source says that when Avram and Sarai, that's what's called in there, right? When those people were together intimately, says in Kabbalah that they birthed the souls of converts, but not any actual person. They didn't have any actual people as children. They didn't have an real child. So we might conceive of that. What does it mean they birthed the souls of converts? So in a certain sense, it's like the idea of having an idea, of birthing an idea, of thinking about an idea in your mind. Ideas are great. But it's like if two people marry each other and they're both living in the world of ideas, so nothing ever gets done. They forget to pay the bills, and the Con Edison comes and shuts off the electricity. You need to have a person in the world of ideas, so to speak, that's like Avraham Avinu, and a person who's in the world of action, a concrete world, that's Sarah. But only Sarah after her name changes. So Sarah has a Yerida, but her Yerida is what allows her to give birth. Her Yerida is, so to speak, from the world of ideas, if you would, from the world of thought into the world of concrete action. So her Yerida, to become a makabel, to become a recipient, to receive the seed from Abraham, to receive the idea, if you will, from Abraham. Ideas are great, but they don't do anything. They sit on the table. Who's going to actualize the idea? Who's going to make that idea concrete? Sarah is the hay, that's the expansiveness, right? That's what the letter of the yud and the hay. The yud is the little nekuda, like we spoke before, it's a little dot. And the hay expands, takes the yud and expands it, oirich and reichem, expands it breadth and depth. It's the same yud, just expanding it. She's taking what Avram gives. She's willing to forgo of her own elevated greatness of the yud. She's willing to forgo being Sarai, which is a more elevated level, technically speaking. She says, I'll have a Yerida. I want to be a mother. And that ability to then give birth through her Yerida is what makes her Sarai, maybe, is what allows her to have a child, is by having the Yerida. So is it a Yerida? It is. It is a Yerida, but it's a Tzarech Aliyah. It's a Tzarech Aliyah. It's not really a Yerida. So the Yerida itself is an Aliyah.
Almost like a bow and arrow. You have to pull the
back.
bow back, and the further you pull back,
The Rebbe spoke about this in 1951, like Weimar, the Rebbe spoke about this. The whole Indian of a bow and arrow is you bring it back and down. And that's how you should hide. It's spoken as the Indian of bittul. Stepping back and lowering oneself is what enables the arrow to fly farther. And that's the best way to fight the Yetzer Hara. Right? There's two ways to fight the Yetzer Hara. One is hand-to-hand combat. At that point, you're already in it. You're going to get punched in the face. It's going to hurt. You're in the battle. But much better is preventative medicine. Is strike the enemy before they strike you, like the Gemara says in Sanhedrin. If only our leaders in Israel would Hashkim Lahorgicha. The Gemara says psak halacha. Get up to kill your enemy first, right? That's the bow and arrow. It's from further away. That's much more effective. Don't get in the bow in the first place. Anyway, that's a digression. But yeah,
It's also like what we learned on Thursday, which was about the Zichus of so something like the Chametz starts out as a pure, it's at a level of purity, it's just pure thought of it. And it comes down to earth and being in the physical body, having this read into the body enables us to reach even higher heights
yeah,
after the after that, as a result of being
yeah. So just quickly, the end of Allah is Yitzchak, but to give birth to Yitzchak, we're okay already. Siddha the Kedusha lo yotzarich. You don't need to have. I think it means you don't need to have a further read. I think it means. Why? Because to further from Avram to Yitzchak, there's already bittul. Avram is already bittul. But Sarah needed the hay. She needed that ability to, in a sense, step back, to lower herself, if you will, to be willing to forego her own personal yud, her own personal greatness, to be on par with Avram. They were basically on par. They're both chachma. She says, well, she didn't say it, so, but she's willing to have that yerida, to take on the hay, to let go of that elevated kedusha, the yud, and become a makabel, become a recipient. And the recipient is the idea of expansiveness. And it's dafka to that expansiveness, that's the 9 months in the womb, right? That develops that idea. She's the one that takes the yud, the seed, the idea, if you will, of Avram, and translates it and develops it and nurtures it into something concrete. And now it's a child.
Why is the hay of Sarah viewed as Yerida, but the hay from Avram is viewed as a Simpson?
That's a good question. So I don't think the hay is at Tzimtzum.
Nothing was taken away from them.
Right, nothing's taken away. It's a good point. It's a good point.
Also, his name's Av.
Right. The hay, like he says,
You have both the Tzimtzum and you have the
Tzimtzum and the Chachma, Yud and hay. And it says, Hainu on the fifth last line, Hainu kavod shemafush b'mikra ki av hamon goyim. The pasuk says, why is it called Avraham? What do you need the hay for? And like Ari Lippert, nothing's taken away. It's being added. So what's he being added? Av hamon goyim. You're going to become the father of many nations. That's the expansiveness. That's the hay. It's also an expansiveness. I think that's what it means. Okay, it's a short mimer, a little bit maybe hard to understand, but I hope the idea was there a little bit. So it's really two sides of the coin. Last week we had the mimer Nochi Moginlock on the previous page about the flow of chesed of Avram is never going to stop. He even wants to give to Yishmael. So we say Baruch Atah Hashem Mogein Avram. Please Hashem. We say it every morning when the sun rises, when it's most recognizable that God's chesed, the flowers are opening, the sun rises. Nothing to do with time change, I think. And we say, Mogen Avram Hashem, please put a shield on that flow of blessing you're going to give to the world. Make it rain, just don't make a mabul, right? Whatever flow of blessing you're going to give to the world, make sure I'm actually able to receive it. I need a Mogen, and we need a shield on that. That's Mogen Avram. We're tzimtzumifying. We're slowing down. We're mitigating. We're closing off. We're pupilling, so to speak, the flow of energy from God. This week's mimer, it's a little bit different idea. It's a different, maybe it's a different side of the coin, maybe. That Sarai, it's becomes Sarah. It's not that she needs to stop the flow of energy. It's that she needs to allow the flow. Because she has the yud, which is a chokhmah, which is bittul, which is nothingness, which is the ayin. Chokhmah me'ayin timatze. That you can't have children from that. She has to open up the floodgates. Get the hay opens up the floodgates. That's the expansiveness of the bina. Hisrachus. That's the womb expanding upon the ideas. And that's all you read the Tzarech Halil. Okay, I'm sorry we went over time, but that's what happens when we had the Halacha and the Chassidus. Once again, we have to credit to Yaakov for sponsoring Le'ilui Nishmas, his wife's grandmother. Grandmother Rivka Bas Emanuel. I got it right. Rivka Bas Emanuel. Thank you everyone for coming. And feedback is always welcome, and we went a little bit quick, but
You can make it.
oh, is there anyone down Meyer?
Daven in my yeshiva.
Oh, and Lel Shishi tomorrow night, by the way. Everybody's welcome and invited. It's 8:30 to 10, food, Avrusa learning, and fun.